Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another Haunting Hour TV show episode review. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing Lotsa Luck. And since Lotsa Luck doesn't have a physical DVD release, I want to be overlaying an image I made here. Now, Lotsa Luck is a season 4 episode I never got around to watching because when the show first came on, I think I hopped on either in late season 1 or in late season 2. And I got through a good amount. I had pretty much the entire show on my DVR at one point. And then season 4 rolled around and I kind of dropped off. And I don't think I ever watched this. This was like one of the last few episodes in the show. The only thing I knew about this episode, before I went into it, this was the first time watch, was that Brendan Fletcher, who is from the Goosebumps original show, who starred as Grady Tucker in The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, I knew he was in this, and I was curious to see how he would perform, and honestly, he stole the show with this episode. This is just one of those situations, kind of like when Good Ghouls Go Bad, the movie, where, you know, like Christopher Lloyd steals the show in that. Brendan Fletcher makes this episode. Without Brendan Fletcher's performance as Seamus, this episode would probably be one of the worst kids' horror episodes I've ever seen. But since he is a good villain, like a truly great performance, this episode shines because of him. Yeah. So this episode was written by Nicole Dubuque and directed by James Head. And it's one of those episodes I feel kind of small scale, even though there's obvious setups to make it a bigger scale than it was. For what it is, based on the performances and some other moments, they had some pretty good moments in the episode, I would recommend this episode to watch. If you have never watched it before, just for Brandon Fletcher's performance alone, you should watch this. As a casual viewer of the show, I wouldn't say that this is one of the greatest episodes in the show, or one of the scariest, but it is something to marvel at based on the character performances. So, it does get a recommend for me off the bat. If you have not seen this, go try it out. It is one of these luck and superstition-based stories that has R.L. Stine's name attached to it that's kids' horror. So, people out there trying to say Superstitious, the novel, should be covered. I'm not covering it. But I thought I might as well include it here. I know there's another episode called Walls that has this twist involved with luck, but since the episode's not even about that kind of, I thought I would not cover it for this little marathon I'm doing. But for Lotsa Luck, I did contemplate it, and I decided to go ahead and throw it on because I knew a lot of people would probably say that I missed it. So, there you go. So, let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. So, the main character you need to know is named Greg. He's played by Nolan Gould. You might recognize him from Modern Family. He played the younger brother. This guy, he goes to a high school, and it's just one unsuspecting day, and he sees his crush about to leave in her car and tries to flag her down, maybe to ask her to the dance. He picks up a flyer for the dance and gets his idea, and then he slips and falls, and they laugh at him and drive off, and he gets up and notices that his bus has left him there. After that, he looks at his bike, and his bike's been stolen, and there's only a wheel left, and he gets pretty much defeated and sits down on a bench, and the bench is freshly painted, so he sits down in wet paint. So now he's forced to walk home, and he walks the walk of shame home, and he makes it up to his house, and he is greeted by his mom, who lets him in, and essentially Greg is like, I just have this streak of bad luck. I don't know what's wrong with me. And the mom is an Irish American mom who's an immigrant, and she has this accent like she's from Ireland. And she says, there's no such thing as luck. And the dad chimes in, and he's like, maybe you need to go find a 4-leaf clover or something. And then it cuts to this being on the porch laughing, and it looks like a leprechaun. And this is Brandon Fletcher's character, Seamus. And then it cuts to the opening credits, because that's how the show sometimes did the episodes. They'll start off with a scene and cut to the credits. Then after the credits are over, Uh, Greg is trying to find a way to get rid of his bad luck. He's in the garage. He's looking around through things, and something falls over, and it's this old book. Uh, it's a leather-bound book thought to belong to his mom, and when he opens it up, there's instructions on how to find a leprechaun, and leprechauns grant you wishes to help get rid of your bad luck or something like that. And as he's reading, Greg is stopped by his mom, and she takes the book and says, "You don't need to worry about these things. They aren't real. You don't need to waste your time with this." But Greg somehow doesn't believe her, but he puts it in the back of his mind, and he has to go take out some trash. And presumably Seamus is hiding in the bushes, and at this point, it's kind of implying that Seamus might be influencing this bad luck streak that Greg has been going through, but it's not really stated to be the case. But as he's wheeling the trash down to the end of his driveway, his crush in her bug pulls up with a bunch of her friends and stops and greets him, and he asks her out to go to the dance. And then he falls down and the trash spills all over him, and the girls laugh and drive off. And he looks over in the trash and sees that leather book, and then he sees the instructions on how to catch a leprechaun. And so he follows the instructions, and he goes out to the woods, presumably by his house, and he takes his gold trophy, because the book says how you catch a leprechaun is baiting him with gold. So he puts his gold trophy out with a string, and he's waiting for, the leprechaun to come. And then as he's reading the book, he reads that if you hear a whistle, that means the leprechaun is coming. And when he hears that, he yanks the rope, and it captures this leprechaun. And the leprechaun's like trying to trick him by saying, "Hey, aren't you so and so's daughter? Your family and my family go back a long time." And Greg's like, "I'm not listening to you. You're a leprechaun. You owe me 3 wishes." And the leprechaun's like, "Okay, let's shake on it. If I give you wishes, you let me go." So they shake, and then Seamus is like, "Okay, so what's your first wish?" And Greg's first wish is to be lucky, because he's had a bad luck streak. So Seamus agrees and gives him a rabbit foot. But before he gives him the rabbit foot pendant to put around his neck, he tells him that his magic is about balance. So when he gives something, you have to take away something else. So when you give luck to someone, you have to take luck away from somebody else. Greg doesn't really hear that instruction, but takes the rabbit foot anyway. And he, as soon as he puts it on, Seamus presumably disappears. And then when he walks off, there's a scene cutting to Seamus where he's mentioning that the family debt might get finally paid off, insinuating that something else might be going on with Seamus's motives here. So Greg arrives home, and the next day comes, and he gets a phone call from this girl. It's Amy, his crush with the bug, saying that she'll go out with him to the dance. So, of course, he's like elated and he's excited, and then he tells his parents about how excited he is that the girl of his dreams said yes to go to the dance with him, and he says that they might have to go get a tux. And the dad says, "We'll see what we can do." And then the mom goes in the pantry, and for some reason she pulls out a box of Lotsa Lux cereal and there's like ominous music accompanied with it. And she's like, "What is this?" And the dad's like, "Oh, I must have picked that up by accident or something while out." Like, very stupid scene. I don't know why it exists, but it's there. So Greg goes outside and notices that he's won a brand new bicycle from this contest he entered in a couple months back. And it's a green bicycle, brand new, replaces the one that was stolen. And the mom and dad see that his luck is kind of turned around. His dad mentions that, and the mom's like, "What's that around your neck?" And she notices this rabbit foot pendant, and she starts to look really suspiciously at him. And then the dad gets a phone call, and it's revealed that the dad has lost his job. So immediately Greg knows that something's wrong, and he runs off to the woods to try to find Seamus. And he finds Seamus, and he wishes his second wish to be that he wishes that he had unlimited amount of money because his dad lost his job. And Seamus is like, okay, you know, if you want my wealth, I'll give it to you, but you have to be cautious of your health or something like that. So Greg takes the gold and puts it in a basket and drags it to his house. And he's stopped by his mom. And his mom pretty much knows now that he's been making deals with a leprechaun. Now, mind you, his mom has been apprehensive about telling him about if these leprechauns or any of these Irish-born legends are actually true. And she actually lied to him up front in the beginning of the episode about it. But now she's like, okay, so you made a deal with a leprechaun. And then she warns him about leprechauns, you know, they play tricks, and after your third wish, they try to take your soul. And your Greg's great-grandfather was the only man to ever outsmart a leprechaun. And now they must come up with an idea to try to deter the leprechaun, but she needs to know what the leprechaun said to Greg that was in exchange for all this gold. And Greg said something about wealth and health, and she looks off disturbed, and she's like, oh no. And the dad's outside working on his car, and then you see Seamus, you know, in the car messing around with stuff, and then the car hood falls on Greg's dad's arm and breaks his arm. And so the debt was paid there. So now Greg's dad's lost his job. Greg's dad's broke his arm. And there's going to be a third wish coming up where if Greg doesn't make the right wish, he's going to have to give up his soul. So the parents and Greg are trying to set it up to where Seamus can't enter the house. And they put up these herbs. And Greg goes off to the other room to do something or something like that. And Seamus comes in the house anyway and says these herbs are just an old wives' tale. I mean, they don't work. And he greets Greg's mom like a long-awaited friend, or they've known each other from the past. And Seamus does something to Greg's mom and dad to kind of put them in like a state of paralysis where they just can't move. They're kind of like frozen like stone. When Greg realizes this, he's put on the spot by Seamus, and Greg can't rely on his mom for help for this wish, so he has to go on his third wish all on his own, and he decides to make a wish that potentially could revert everything back to normal. And Seamus says, okay, I'll do what you want. And something may or may happen to where that agreement is made and that third final wish is made. Then it cuts to a scene where Greg, seemingly everything is back to normal with him, and he's just glad that everything is fixed now. He doesn't have to deal with Seamus anymore. And then a twist happens, and there's a big revelation that ties back to the past that gets revealed to Greg. I'm not going to say by who. And essentially, through this revelation, the harsh truth comes out about some type of motive that Seamus might have had early on in the story. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you if it's Seamus or somebody else. But there's another motive involved that involves Greg directly. And after learning this, Greg's pretty much... It's left to assume that Greg is screwed. And that's how the story ends. So, yeah, that's lots of luck in a nutshell. So, the strengths in this episode, I didn't really touch on it that much. I said a lot in the beginning of this video, but Brendan Fletcher, his performance as Seamus is mesmerizing. I mean, even though he does play more of like a stock leprechaun character, and the story doesn't really go to dive into Greg's character at all. Maybe because Brendan Fletcher just steals the show so much, I don't know. But he literally makes this episode. If like I said it before in the video, if he's not in this episode is pretty abysmal. His performance was really good. For how small scale of a story this was, he captivated every single second on the screen, and I was invested because of his performance. Greg had potential. Like, I'm not saying he's a great character, and I'll get into why, and I think it's more due to the writing than it is the actual character itself. I think Greg is a good character to kind of base that bumbling, bad luck archetype of a character to where fate gives him an opportunity, and he has to weigh the gravity of his decisions because it affects his family. And I think he has really good intentions inherently. Like when he realizes that he messed up his first wish, he tries to correct it and make it right to his dad, and then he messed up again. And then, you know, the episode doesn't really do a good job at selling this, but he had a better setup than he did before Seamus came around, and he had there's a thought to where maybe he's willing to give it up for his family, and that's pretty mature to do. So I can't really knock Greg's character all that much. I think more of the writing, and I'll get into the negatives in just a minute, but I think more of the writing kind of just affected my opinion of him. Now, the mom character, you know, I guess she was fine, but, you know, I guess I'm spilling into the negatives. So, I guess we're spilling into the negatives now. The mom character is so confusing. She reminds me of the mom. Have you ever seen the Disney Channel original movie Luck of the Irish, where that mom was trying to withhold information from her son in that movie about the Irish heritage? The mom here is essentially doing the same thing, and she like lies to Greg, and Greg, since he doesn't know the truth, goes behind her and then does something stupid, and then she tells him later on that he shouldn't have done it. So if you're going to blame Greg for doing something bad, then why would you lie to him and say that they don't exist, or he should not waste his time with it? It makes no sense, and I think part of her character just feels so forced to kind of trot the story on later on, and I saw that coming from a mile away. I'm like, wait, this isn't gonna be, it's gonna be just like Luck of the Irish. So I guess that's a trope in Irish heritage stories. I don't know. I mean, I've seen it twice now, so yeah, I just found that kind of a weird choice with the mom character. The small scale factor this episode has really baffles me. You know, there's some other 22-minute episodes or 20-minute episodes in this show that go a little grander. You know, even episodes like Headshot had more depth, more scenery changes. There's the one about the comic book. I forget the title of it. You know, the one with Dylan Minnette in it. The one about the comic book one had a Comic-Con location. There's a lot of location changes in some of these shorter episodes. And this one, the most you got was a house, the school in the very beginning, and the woods. That's it. There's a dance mentioned. That he asked his girl out to go to the dance. You couldn't involve a dance setting, or maybe have them all dress up in a tuxedo or a dress, and involved a wish there, or something. You know, anything. This episode just feels too small scale for the opportunities presented in the writing. And this kind of goes back to Greg. Greg is the biggest, I want to say the biggest negative, but there's so much missed opportunity with his character. He had this good bad luck angle going for him. I mentioned this in the Discord after I watched this, but I think that the episode just really fumbled the ball a little bit with how they handled the setup of the wishes. They had a good idea with the mom being involved. This is how I would have done it to make Greg come off more authentic and make the story feel more whole and a lot more grander than it was. You know, how about Greg gets introduced to Seamus before the credits roll. So the opening scene, Greg's maybe having a bad day at school. He's walking home through the woods and he accidentally catches a leprechaun by accident. And it's Seamus. And he knows, and he gets freaked out and runs home. And his mom's like, what's wrong? And he's like, what do you know about leprechauns? And maybe the mom starts spilling the beans about leprechauns. Then it cuts to the credits. And then Greg is told to avoid the leprechaun at all costs. So Greg keeps his bad luck, and then he goes throughout the episode. Maybe he's trying to impress Amy, the girl he likes, and maybe he messes up something of Amy's, and then he makes his first wish to fix it, but then he has to break something else. And then maybe he decides to go to the dance by himself, or maybe with Amy, and something happens where he gets embarrassed, and then he makes a second wish, wishing that everybody forgets what happened at the dance and has a do-over, and there's a cost with that. And then maybe build up to that finale that the episode had a little more grander, and that same finale would have worked, just done the whole other first two parts of the episode differently. That's all it needed to make this episode better. But I think the episode's budget kind of showed, and it was just too small scale. It was just too simple. It came off just like a generic monkey's paw, like the 10,000th monkey's paw tale. Feels just like something Be Careful What You Wish For is like. Just simple, not too spectacular, not too special in its premise or in its writing. Just a lot of missed opportunities there. And also, I've noticed this about the Haunting Hour episodes. I kind of mentioned it in the plot overview. But there's just some random stuff that just make no sense in these episodes I'm starting to see. And the one in this episode happens to be a box of Lotsa Lux cereal. And it serves nothing to the story by having that in there. It's just completely random. like in Mascot, there was that yellow mustard gas that came out in Big Yellow's lair. It makes no sense of how that even happened. The box of cereal randomly shows up. Is the box of cereal an omen? I mean, the dad said he might have picked it up by accident at the supermarket. So is the dad just trying to mess with the mom? Like, is this supposed to be a dad joke? It's weird choices like that just make me question some of the writing, or maybe the production or the directing of these episodes sometimes. But yeah, this episode had a surprising amount of negatives. But like I said, the story isn't that offensive because, going back to positives one last time, the twist ending to this episode is also another saving grace to it. I like the angle that it took, dealing with the heritage setting and how it affects Greg in the present day. I really like that. I really like that the story, it adds this level of just WTF. Somebody else to describe it, it's like, okay, that was actually pretty good. And then the ending was really great. The very ending, I don't want to spoil. I don't want to say anything else. It's just really great. So yeah, with Brandon Fletcher's performance and I guess the ending, that really saved this episode from just being mediocre. So I thought that this episode was going to get a higher than a 3.5, but I didn't know where. Originally I was selling on a 3.9, but then after thinking about it, I actually went back on the 3.9 and went lower, just because it feels too small scale for my taste. It's a good episode because of the performance of Brendan Fletcher and because of the ending. Without that, it's just kind of mediocre. So taking that into account, I went ahead and gave this episode just a flat average 3.7 out of 5. It's openly flawed to me. It's nothing spectacular, nothing great, but it's good. It's good for what it is. It's simplistic. It's not too offensive. It's actually pretty inoffensive. It's just lacking any scale or anything of like, it has mild originality issues, but like I said, the performances and the ending make up for a lot there. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Lots of Luck. Let me know down in the comment section if you have seen this episode. Do you love this or do you hate this? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.